We have never built a car before. We've modified them, bought them, sold them, and broken plenty of them, but we have never taken on a project anything quite like this.
We are on our way to do something that is not very smart. We're gonna buy a project car that is not finished, and there's really just one major problem. We have no idea what we're doing.
But apparently millions of people are using ChatGPT as their mechanic. Some people swear by it, and other people say it's the worst idea ever, so we're gonna find out.
We're gonna throw the instructions aside and pull up some AI and figure out if AI can help two dudes build a race car.
Now let me introduce you to the project. This is a 1988 Mustang Fox Body, and it's only about halfway finished. But here's what makes this car different. Instead of a 5.0, it's getting a brand new, never started 2.3 liter EcoBoost crate engine. From the factory, it makes over 300 horsepower, but it only weighs about 418 pounds. Backing it up is a brand new built T5 transmission, QA1 coilovers, Cobra R wheels, S550 Mustang brakes, and thousands upon thousands of dollars in brand new performance parts that have never been used. So we handed the seller $13,000 for this pile of parts, loaded it up on the trailer, and hit the road home. Based on all of the information that I just gave you, what do you think the estimate is for total parts costs in the car that I just sent you?
I estimate the parts alone, brand new and used, are likely in the ballpark of $25,000 to $30,000. That includes that crate engine, the built transmission, all the performance suspension, brakes, and other upgrades. Of course, exact numbers would depend on each part's brand and whether you got some deals, but that's a pretty solid range.
Well, if ChatGPT is accurate for us starting this build, we are in a really good spot.
So we got this thing into the garage and no one died in the process, which is always a plus. It went fairly smooth, all things considered, from towing it and picking it up. But ultimately, this was not a car that was on our radar. It was the build of the engine bay that caught our attention on that Facebook Marketplace ad. But we really don't know what we're getting into, so we got to get it up on the lift and check it out.
All right, so let's get those lift points set, which we have now. But before we officially raise it up in the air, let's give a full exterior overview and see what exactly that we have here. Now that we have this under the lights, we can see the condition of the body, the condition of the wheels, and just the overall condition of the build, because we were kind of looking at it in a dark space. It does look like the body's relatively clean. We're gonna need some new side moldings across the side here to clean everything up. There's a few little paint chips here and there, and if I look at it close enough, it looks like there's a few ripples in the door a little bit. So it might be a good candidate for a wrap, assuming that this has been repainted at some point, but it doesn't look too bad from just a couple of feet away. If we move our way around the back of the car, the overall back end does once again look pretty nice. There's a small dimple right in the bumper here that's hard to see unless you're looking at it straight on. And then if we open up the trunk, you can see it's completely gutted on the interior. They did a nice job with throwing some like gray primer paint throughout the whole interior. So that's gonna make it really easy to clean up and look nice and kind of help us with the direction on where we wanna go with making the build look nice. And that was a big reason that it looks so appealing, because it clearly has been stripped down to nothing and painted, and it looks quite nice for sure. Closing the trunk, we have noticed that when we lock it, and like we shut the trunk, there's a bit of play on both sides of it, up and down, on both driver and passenger side. So we're gonna have to figure out what's going on with that. On the driver side, apparently they said that they came with OEM Cobra R wheels, or OE Cobra R wheels. When we get it up in the air, we're gonna go ahead and verify that, because apparently reps are quite common on these. The driver's door definitely has a lot more paint chips towards the rear of the door approaching that back quarter. So we're gonna see if we can address some of those, or like I said, wrap candidate for sure. And then once again, some of those things are peeling here on the side. But all in all, we got ourselves a relatively clean shell here, just a few more paint chips here. We also have the blacked out headlight housings that have already been swapped onto this one in particular. But of course, this under the hood is why this was so appealing to us. But and just for reference, this body, I would assume, is worth between $6,000 and $8,000 without anything in it at all, with the condition that it's currently in, because there's no rust on it at all.
Let's get into what's going on up top here. The guy we bought it from did a fantastic job, and like I said earlier, this is what made it really appealing. So we have the Ford control pack that's going to give the brains to the 2.3 liter EcoBoost. This was one of the last crate engines that was purchased prior to discontinuing that 2.3, and he did a fantastic job plumbing it in. We've got QA1 all up front, including the subframe, tubular subframe, coilovers up front. We're going to get QA1 going in the back, and we'll look at that closer once we get it up in the air. GT500 coolant reservoir, Mishimoto, all the cooling up front is plumbed in nicely there. We have the UPR catch can, Gem Sport engine mounts, so everything's top notch here. Nothing is cobbled together. Kind of the party continues underneath. You can see up top here, it's just, it's really well done.
From the underside, he also did quite a good job as well, but there's a few things that we need to button up. But while we're down here, let's touch on the positives quick, and then we'll start looking at the negatives and ultimately what we need to fix before we ask AI what exactly our first steps should be to get this thing fired up, because I think that is going to be goal number one. We want to get this engine running, and everything aside from getting it running is going to be easy from there. So on the underside here, like my dad mentioned, full QA1 tubular front subframe. This whole tubular subframe with their control arms, with their double adjustable coilovers, or single adjustable, I'm not sure, to double check the top of them. Then we also have the lowest end of S550 Mustang front brakes, calipers and rotors. And then we also have these billet drop spindles to essentially allow us to fit these larger brakes on here. I mean, this is just crazy running through parts here, guys. Like this QA1 tubular front subframe coilover kit, this is like $4,000. We're talking about these spindles here, like a $1,700 part. The crate engine is like $7 grand. The ECU control pack is like $2 to $3 grand. We have a $2,500 to $3,000 built T5 transmission. We have ourselves an S-Slinger, I believe is the pronunciation name, that essentially converts the 2.3 to a I think it's a Ford bolt pattern to essentially allow us to put whatever transmission on the back of that we want. We also have a starter that's from them as well. $500 starter here. Engine mounts that are ready to go, $500. Just so much money is in this car. Not talking about the $1,000 power steering rack and so on and so forth. He clearly used all the highest end parts on everything on the front end of this car, but we need to figure out how to make it all sit in here flush. Because if you come look at the transmission right now, it's sitting at a bit of an angle. So we need to figure out a different mounting solution to figure out how to get the transmission to fit evenly, which could also be causing, if you look at the bottom of this oil pan, we're also at a bit of an angle as well. So we need to figure out what to do with the engine mounts because they're already currently maxed out for adjustment. So not sure how we're going to go about that, but there's a lot of people that have done these swaps before, so we're going to go ahead and figure that out. Then, of course, like I said, with the transmission, and nothing behind this has been done. So we need to figure out what we're doing back here with QA1 suspension, with the rear end, and with converting the rear drums to disc. So we're going to convert to disc brakes in the rear. We have to run all new brake lines. We have to figure out what we're doing at the fuel system and run fuel lines. And yeah, we have a lot to do, but I would say the whole front end of the car probably has another 10% of effort to make perfect, but from there back, it's all on us to figure this out.
We're really on the hunt to figure out if these 1995 Cobra R wheels are genuine. So far, everything points to them being either an actual OEM part, but what we want to know is, was it a Ford racing part or did these come off of an actual car? So in order to figure that out, we want to see inside the hub. So let's do that really quick.
While we're under here, let's just look at some of the other things I've noticed that we need to touch up. Like for example, this intake pipe that he did is not actually into the turbo here. So we're gonna have to figure out if we need to shorten this a bit so we can actually properly fit this in to the front of our turbo. There's quite a few sensors that aren't plugged in. We need to look at the Ford control pack wiring harness that was included with this engine to figure out where some of these go. We also need to figure out a power steering pump solution. So a lot of people actually recommend that you use a power steering pump out of like a BMW 335i, and that's what this fancy bracket from Gem Sport is for. It essentially mounts right here. We put a pulley on it, and then it'll run on this additional part of the pulley that we have on the front of the crank. So we still have a few things that we need to work out there, and then we also need to, of course, run our power steering lines and figure out if we're going to put a power steering cooler right in front of our Mishimoto intercooler, our radiator up here. So we have a few things that we need to figure out and sort out that are not done besides just the mounting and location of things. But everything that is done to this point does look very well done and quite professional.
So we're genuinely curious what we really collected in parts here, just so we know as we make decisions going into the build, what the car is worth versus what we're putting into it. So the wheels matter in that regard. And what we found by looking at the stamping right by the valve stem, as well as around back on each of the spokes, there's different stamping made in Japan, the size of the wheel, and there's also some stamping inside of the hub here, that these are genuine Ford Racing Performance parts wheels. They did not come off of a Cobra R, but because they were so popular and so lightweight, Ford introduced them or supplied them as an accessory you could buy. These are legit Cobra R wheels. Could be anywhere from $1,000 to $1,800. These are in pretty darn good condition. They are not perfect. There's a few scuffs in them, but I would say they're upper level good condition.
Taking that Cobra R wheel off also gives us kind of a better look as to what's going on here with the S550 front brakes that were installed, as well as that QA1 coilover right up top here. You can also see the spindles that were put in that I brought up earlier that are close to a $2,000 set of spindles, and everything here does look like it's pretty professionally done. So we've given a pretty thorough walkthrough on the parts and everything that are involved with this car. Now we need to figure out what we're gonna do next, right? There's so many things that need to get done to get this car ready for the road, and we've never built a car before. So let's start diving in to a parts list and figure out what the next step is if truly our goal is to get the engine running before we do anything else. So let's start giving everything that we have to ChatGPT and see what it tells us to do. I have uploaded everything that we currently know about this Fox body to ChatGPT, and ultimately our end goal here is to figure out where we need to start to get this vehicle running. Like I said, my dad and I, we have never built a car before, so we're gonna try to use ChatGPT as our own personal mechanic throughout this entire process. And I have given it all the parts, I've given it all photos, I've given it everything related to this car build. Let's see where its head's at on where we should start to get this engine running. ChatGPT, what do you think?
Give me just a moment. I'm thinking. Honestly, you're in a good spot. This isn't a missing parts nightmare. It's almost a completed build that just needs to be tied together. First, I would make absolutely sure that the engine and trans are sitting straight. That means loosening, centering, and checking clearances. After that, we can inventory every electrical component and build the fuel system before worrying about starting it up for the first time. I can be your build partner every step of the way. Send over whatever you get and we'll keep this build on track.
So what should be the very first step after we get our engine and transmission aligned? Are we gonna start working on fuel system right off the bat, or do we figure out electrical? Because we don't know anything about electrical just yet.
Let me check. I would go electrical before fuel because the control pack is the brain of the whole setup. We need to know how it's powered before we wire anything else. So step one, align the drivetrain. Step two, lay out and label every connector in the control pack. Then we can build the fuel system with confidence and not guess on wiring.
Okay, and since we are going to be using the factory Ford control pack, it's almost all wired up except for the interior. Do I need to buy an aftermarket wiring harness for essentially the whole body of the car, or can I still run the factory Ford harness and plug the control pack into it? We already have the Ford control pack gas pedal lined up. We need to install the Ford pack kind of clutch pedal release panel. Where do we go from there?
Let me take a look. Honestly, you're in better shape than a lot of swaps. No, don't buy an aftermarket harness just to get it running. The control pack is already set up to handle the engine as a standalone. What you have left for the factory Fox body harness is lights, wipers, blinkers, and so on. The integration between the two is just a handful of connections. For your project, think of it in phases. Mount and power the control pack, get the pedal and clutch switch in, mount the PCM and fuse box, then later integrate the ignition switch and gauges. That is very doable. The big question for me is, do you still have the original underdash harness and fuse panel in the car?
I think we have officially figured out what exactly we need to do next. So don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join us for episode number 2, where we're going to get the engine and transmission fully aligned and everything ready to go with the engine wiring harness. And then I think we need to start figuring out the additional wiring on top of that, as well as fuel. ChatGPT really is quite clever, being able to walk us through some of those processes, and trying to just pull everything on the internet into one search is pretty incredible. Let's see if it can help us get this thing done.